Welcome to Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. Today we are discussing who serves whom in a business. Written by Terry Chang.
Yeah, and if you are listening right now, you very likely encountered the concept of servant leadership. It's everywhere.
Oh, absolutely everywhere.
Right. It's one of the most persistent trends in the modern business world, especially, if you look at how modern marketing departments or creative agencies structure their teams. The core premise is basically taking the traditional corporate pyramid and just flipping it completely upside down.
Right, taking the boss out of the ivory tower.
Exactly. So instead of having a boss who sits at the apex, handing down mandates and calling all the shots while everyone scrambles to comply, a servant leader operates from the bottom up.
Yeah.
They view their main role as lifting their team. They are there to clear roadblocks, empower frontline employees to do their absolute best work, and focus really heavily on the personal and professional growth of the team.
Rather than just projecting their own authority.
Exactly. And on paper, it sounds incredibly appealing. It sounds like the ideal workplace.
It really does. But as we start looking at the realities of the global market, it brings up a very nuanced challenge that really requires a closer look.
It really does.
And that brings us to the core discussion for today. We have to ask ourselves, does a one-size-fits-all leadership style actually work across entirely different global cultures?
Yeah, that's the big question.
It is. Having managed various teams across different regions over the years, I can tell you it is a critical question.
Yeah.
There's this common assumption in Western corporate circles that a management philosophy that, say, works wonders in a Silicon Valley software company
Right.
will automatically yield the exact same productivity halfway across the world.
Which is it's a huge assumption.
A massive one, because business operations do not exist in a vacuum. They're deeply intertwined with local culture, complex histories, and very firmly established social norms. You cannot simply drag and drop a management style and expect seamless integration.
No, you really can't. And to understand why that integration fails, we should look at the author's background. Terry Chang brings a highly unique perspective to this because he has worked extensively in both Western corporate environments and Eastern ones.
Right, specifically spending significant time in Taiwan.
Yes, Taiwan. And what makes his observations so compelling here is that he started out as a massive advocate for servant leadership.
Oh, totally on board with it.
Completely. He believed in it wholeheartedly and saw it as the ultimate way to run a team. But then he transitioned into the Taiwanese corporate environment.
And that was a wake-up call.
A major turning point. It became vividly clear through his day-to-day interactions that you simply cannot separate a leadership philosophy from the cultural soil it's planted in. The methodology completely clashed with the environment.
The source material uses a tech analogy to explain that clash, which I think resonates perfectly with how we build corporate infrastructure.
Oh, I love this analogy.
Right. Think about applying Western servant leadership in an Eastern company, like trying to run a brand new smartphone app on a completely different, perhaps much older, operating system.
Yeah.
Let's say your development team has built this incredibly sophisticated B2B software application designed to streamline supply chain logistics.
Okay.
The code itself is flawless. The user interface is highly intuitive, and in its native environment, it operates with incredible efficiency.
It's a great piece of software.
Exactly. But if you take that exact same B2B software and try to install it onto a legacy system that was fundamentally built with a completely different architecture,
It's going to crash.
it simply will not function. It will crash. It is not that the software application is poorly designed,
Right.
and it's not that the underlying operating system is broken either. They're just fundamentally incompatible. The environment was simply never built to process that specific set of instructions.
That makes so much sense. And from a frontline perspective, when we talk about the underlying operating system of a company, we are really talking about the power dynamics in the workplace.
So fun.
Those dynamics dictate every single interaction you have. Let's look at the contrast in action. In many Western companies, there is a very strong, pervasive expectation of egalitarianism.
Yes.
Imagine a brand new employee, maybe a 22-year-old fresh out of college, sitting in a major marketing strategy meeting.
Just getting their feet wet.
Right. If that junior employee respectfully disagrees with the CEO and pitches a completely different B2C consumer engagement strategy, that behavior is very often celebrated.
Oh, they love that.
They do. That young marketer is labeled as a go-getter. They are seen as someone with initiative, bold ideas, and leadership potential. The culture actively encourages and rewards that kind of bottom-up friction because it's viewed as the engine for innovation.
Now, Take that exact same scenario, the same junior employee, the same B2C strategy pitch, the exact same meeting, and place it into a more traditional hierarchical culture.
The reception changes entirely.
Completely. In many Eastern corporate cultures, there is a deeply ingrained respect for authority, tenure, and hierarchy. That same fresh college graduate speaking out of turn or publicly challenging a senior executive's direction.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they would not be seen as a go-getter. They would likely be viewed as lacking fundamental respect, disrupting team harmony, and simply not understanding the established corporate structure.
It's just a completely different set of rules.
It really is a completely different set of rules for professional conduct. The action that gets you promoted in one culture might severely damage your reputation in another.
Which completely shifts what employees actually expect from the people managing them. When you think about employee needs under the umbrella of servant leadership, the expectations are highly specific and, honestly, pretty emotionally driven. Employees operating in that egalitarian environment expect their boss to actively prioritize them. They expect the leader to map out their personal career growth, to actively mentor them through challenges.
I'd be invested in them.
Yes, to make them feel like they are an integral, valued part of a much bigger vision. They want to be deeply involved in the why of the business, not just the what.
They want a seat at the table.
Exactly. They want a boss who asks for their opinion before making a move. It's viewed as a collaborative journey.
Now contrast that with what we see in other environments. In a highly traditional hierarchical company, those frontline expectations are fundamentally different.
They're very different.
Employees in those settings are often looking for robust job security and crystal clear, unambiguous directions from the top down.
They just want to know what to do.
Exactly. They are not necessarily looking for a manager to be their life coach or their sounding board. They want to know exactly what their daily tasks are. They want to execute those tasks with high precision, and then they just want to complete their shift and go home to their families.
Yeah, they place a high premium on predictability and stability.
They do, and providing excessive autonomy to someone who just wants clear instructions can actually cause significant anxiety.
And that mismatch in expectations brings us to one of the most memorable analogies from the source material. Trying to be a servant leader in a strictly hierarchical culture is like showing up to a highly formal, fancy dinner wearing a bathing suit.
That is such a great visual.
Isn't it? Think about the mechanics of that situation. Both parties are technically wearing clothes.
Technically, yes.
The person in the tailored tuxedo and the person in the bathing suit are both dressed for an activity, but the vibe is entirely mismatched.
Totally wrong for the room.
It creates a deeply confusing and uncomfortable atmosphere for everyone in the room. You have a leader who is trying to be a supportive servant, constantly asking, "How can I help you today? What are your thoughts on this project?"
While the employee's just staring at them.
Exactly. The employee is sitting there in their proverbial tuxedo thinking, "Why on earth are you asking me? You are the manager. Your job is to tell me what to do so I can get to work."
It's a massive disconnect.
It is. Neither side feels comfortable or productive.
And that discomfort is very real when leadership styles and cultural expectations collide. To really understand why that traditional hierarchy is so deeply entrenched in places like Taiwan, we have to pull back and look at the broader historical context.
Right. It didn't just happen overnight.
Not at all. It did
No.
not develop by accident.
Yeah.
If we look back at Taiwan's history of rapid industrialization, it provides the necessary context. Their economic boom.
Oh, it was massive.
Massive,
Yeah.
especially in sectors like computers, consumer electronics, and complex original equipment manufacturing. That was built entirely on a foundation of extreme efficiency.
Right.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, they were competing in a highly aggressive, high-stakes global market. They won those global contracts by hitting incredibly tight production targets, maintaining strict, uncompromising quality control, and moving faster than their competitors.
Which requires a very specific way of working.
Exactly. In that kind of high-pressure, zero-margin-for-error manufacturing environment, a top-down, command-and-control leadership style worked flawlessly. It built an economic miracle by ensuring that thousands of workers moved in the exact same direction at the exact same time.
Wow. And that historical context really changes how you view the modern corporate landscape there. It wasn't hierarchy simply for the sake of ego.
Why?
It was a hierarchy that actively delivered tangible market dominance. And because of that legacy, the author introduces an alternative management concept, which I found fascinating. Serve up, coach down.
Serve up, coach down.
Yeah. It's a highly practical pivot away from Western servant leadership. Instead of trying to empower absolutely everyone to have an equal say in the strategic direction of the company, this model acknowledges the reality of the hierarchy.
It works with the system instead of fighting it.
Exactly. It focuses on serving your boss, meaning you ensure that the strategic goals handed down from upper management are met with absolute precision. At the same time, you coach the people below you.
Which is where the mentoring aspect still survives.
Right. You ensure your frontline workers have the exact skills, resources, and training they need to execute those goals. The primary overriding focus is making sure those aggressive targets are hit and that the company wins in the marketplace.
It is a pragmatic framework for managers caught in the middle. To make the mechanics of this clear, especially if you're just starting to explore different organizational structures, the music analogy the author uses is very helpful.
Oh, the jazz band versus the orchestra?
Yes. Think of Western servant leadership like a jazz band. In a jazz band, the performance is highly improvisational. Every musician has a voice, everyone gets a solo, and the players are constantly feeding off each other in real time to create the music collaboratively.
The leader is just part of the flow.
Right. The leader of a jazz band is just one part of the ensemble, gently guiding the tempo, but allowing the group to find its own way. On the other hand, the serve-up, coach-down model is much more like a massive classical orchestra.
Very different vibe.
Completely. An orchestra is highly structured. You have dozens of highly skilled musicians, but they're absolutely not improvising.
No solos unless it's on the sheet.
Exactly. They are following sheet music precisely, and they're all watching one single conductor to ensure perfect timing, perfect pitch, and a flawless collective result. Neither approach is inherently better or worse. It entirely depends on what your ultimate goal is and what kind of music the market is actually paying to hear.
That makes so much sense. Looking at it from a frontline marketer's perspective, the orchestra versus jazz band comparison makes it very easy to visualize the day-to-day reality of these work environments. You can easily imagine the chaos of trying to improvise in an orchestra setting.
It would be a disaster.
It really would. But this brings us to a fascinating contradiction that the author specifically points out. When we think of Taiwan today, we immediately think of a global powerhouse in tech.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Internet infrastructure, advanced consumer electronics, these are the companies that are literally inventing the future of hardware.
Cutting edge.
But ironically, some of these exact same companies show immense resistance to adopting new technology internally for their own operations.
Wild to think about.
It is. They might be manufacturing the most advanced B2B hardware components on the planet, but when it comes to upgrading their own internal management software, adopting modern communication platforms, or changing their leadership styles, there is a formidable wall of resistance.
The irony is certainly noticeable to anyone who has done business in that sector. You have companies producing cutting-edge internet devices that ship globally, but internally, their operational teams might still be relying on highly rigid, traditional management structures and legacy internal systems that look like they are from 2 decades ago. That profound resistance to internal change is exactly why the author suggests a blended approach to leadership.
A hybrid model.
Yes. If you are a manager operating in that environment, you cannot simply walk into the office on a Monday morning and throw out the traditional hierarchy.
Yeah, it just won't work.
The system will reject it, just like the wrong operating system rejecting an incompatible app. Instead, you have to consciously build a toolkit.
I like that word, toolkit.
You borrow the best, most empowering traits from servant leadership. Things like active listening, empathy, and targeted employee development. And you carefully integrate them into the existing hierarchical structure. You use those specific tools to gradually build teams that are more adaptable and slightly more open to new ideas, but you do it without completely destabilizing the core chain of command that makes the company efficient in the first place.
Building a toolkit requires you to be highly observant and adaptable as a professional. But as we discuss these regional differences, there is a very important warning flag we need to raise for you. The author's very careful to point this out, and it's a crucial trap to avoid.
Yes.
Beware of the monolith myth. Just because this specific hierarchical dynamic is prevalent in Taiwan's corporate culture does not mean you can generalize and assume all of East Asia operates the exact same way.
A very common trap.
It is. It's a very common mistake for outsiders to make. To use the analogies provided in the source material, assuming all of Eastern corporate culture is a single, uniform entity is like assuming absolutely everyone in Europe is obsessed with soccer and eats pasta every single day.
Right.
Or assuming that everyone across the incredibly vast continent of Asia loves spicy food.
It's a dangerous oversimplification.
Extremely dangerous.
And it can severely damage business relationships. Every single region, every country, and very often different cities within the exact same country have their own deeply unique histories, diverse economic drivers, and distinct business cultures.
Yeah, you really have to pay attention.
You do. You cannot take a management lesson learned in a Taiwanese consumer products manufacturing plant and blindly apply it to a B2C marketing agency in Tokyo or a fast-paced tech startup in Seoul.
It just won't translate.
The subtle nuances in communication, respect, and hierarchy matter immensely. Effective leadership requires deep, continuous observation of the specific environment you are operating in before you make any structural changes.
The nuances truly dictate the outcome. You have to read the room, or in this case, read the entire corporate culture, before you decide which leadership tool to pull out of your bag. If you try to force the improvisational jazz band approach onto a traditional orchestra that has been playing classical symphonies flawlessly for 40 years, you aren't going to get innovation.
You're just going to get noise.
Exactly. You are just going to get a lot of terrible noise and very frustrated employees who feel like management has lost its mind.
So, as we draw this discussion to a close, let's consolidate the key takeaways from Terry Chang's insights. The most important lesson here is that truly exceptional leaders do not rely on a single, rigid management style.
No, they don't.
They do not read one popular business book on servant leadership and attempt to apply it bluntly to every single situation they encounter. Instead, they actively build a comprehensive, flexible toolkit of skills. They learn to adapt their approach based on the local culture, the specific operational needs of the people they are managing, and the overarching situation the business is facing in the market.
It's all about context.
Exactly. It's about maintaining flexibility, demonstrating genuine respect for the existing corporate operating system, and showing a willingness to blend different methodologies to achieve the best possible result for the team and the company.
Well said. And before we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on everything we have discussed regarding cultural alignment.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have spent a lot of time talking about physical, geographic cultures and how deeply they influence and sometimes clash with modern leadership styles. But as global remote work continues to become the standard, and as marketing and tech teams become entirely borderless, with members logging in from 5 different continents simultaneously, what happens next?
That is a great question.
Right. Will we eventually see the organic creation of a completely new hybrid internet culture of leadership, a shared digital operating system that naturally smooths over and resolves these physical geographic differences? It's a fascinating evolution to watch, and it might just change everything we currently know about how human beings work together.
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.